Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Woods, and today I'll be discussing why critical race theory should be taught in our schools. So, in the present status of history of the United States today, in America today, 73% of citizens agree that there is an issue with the way history is being taught in our schools. And out of that 73%, 52% or more than half agree that we should be teaching how racism continues to impact Americans today. Black, white, Asian, Latino, or any other type of race, it's important to see how racism affects us throughout our institutions model, which encompasses the idea of critical race theory. Critical race theory offers a chance to bring people together and create communities of solidarity. And it also helps promote a critical understanding of everybody in the United States. So critical race theory opens up our ideas of what racism is and how it's been really an impactful thing with the development of the United States. So with that being said, what is critical race theory exactly? Critical race theory is a movement by a collection of activists, scholars, and it's interested in the study and transforming the relationship between race, racism, and power. The reason why they're focused on transforming it is because in critical race theory, it encompasses the idea that race, racism, and power are all intertwined within our institutions here in America. So critical race theory helps offer us a chance to see how our institutions have been affected by upfront racism and how that has systemically oppressed people of color. And one quote I love when I think about critical race theory that was said by Derek Bell, one of the founders of critical race theory, is that he says, "It appears that my worst fears have been realized. We have made progress in everything, yet nothing has changed." The reason why this is important is because it encompasses the idea of why we need critical race. Although we are able to be a social mobility and use ourselves as ways to become a part of the United States culture, sometimes you're left working harder than white counterparts. So people of color are often in the chance of, yeah, America is a dream where you can build the American dream if you work hard. However, not everybody works at that same level of difficulty. And some people, because of their race, have to work 10 times as hard than any person who doesn't get any bad rep because of their race. So what are the benefits and arguments of CRT? So to go on the benefits first, critical race theory promotes the foundation of education that is ensuring that students receive a well-rounded learning experience. So critical race theory just doesn't stop at the parts that the United States wants to celebrate. It also introduces the idea of parts of the United States that they've messed up or want to get over. A lot of the times we go back to racism and we think about the idea of racism. Racism isn't taught the way it should be taught in schools. A lot of the time, I think when I first learned about racism, I learned that slaves were indentured servants and a teacher had to tell us that's wrong, but they still allowed it in the book because that's how the United States wants to encompass and kind of portray slavery, when in reality, that's not how slavery was. Slavery was an act of brutality. It was an act of genocide. And then when we think about the other benefits, critical race theory helps dismantle the hierarchy from the inside. So again, it's the idea that race, racism, and power are all encompassed into the same institutions that we uphold today. And because of that, critical race theory can offer a critical lens of how we can fix those institutions. And then lastly, critical race theory asserts that racism has become a part of everyday life. So the reality of it is that critical race theory realizes that racism is a very big part of what the United States culture is. Although we don't want to accept it, racism is pretty much one of the many things that in the United States, I think almost everybody can relate to, because everybody at some point in their life has been present or have done something that we would consider racist if you're a person of color or any person in general. So CRT not only asserts that racism has become a part of everyday life, but also the idea that hate has also become a part of everyday life. So what are the arguments? When I think about the benefits of CRT, it's very hard for me to understand the arguments. However, there are many arguments that have been made throughout this past couple of years opposing critical race theory. So one of the first one is that many view critical race theory as racist, meaning that when people learn about critical race theory, they initially think that critical race theory is meant to divide people and promote hatred onto white people for their part of institutional racism. when in reality, it's just understanding how these institutions have affected upward mobility in communities of color. The second one we have is critical race theory creates a division between races. So when we learn about all the bad stuff that has happened to people of color in the United States, a lot of people would think that critical race theory would bring up this oppression Olympics, which is the idea that one group of people will factor that they went through more than another group of people. When in reality, that's not true. Critical race theory just offers us a perspective to see how racism has affected everybody, not just people of color, but also white people of low economic status as well. And then lastly, it's not really an argument, but there's a reason why people don't want to discuss critical race theory, and that's because of white fragility. White fragility is the idea that people who are white have a hard time understanding or even addressing the facts of racism. In reality, racism and critical race theory is mainly opposed by people who live in white communities, predominantly, or white communities that are predominantly white communities and maybe a little bit of people of color. As you can see in the picture I have below, we have CRT as racist. If you can see, majority of those people there, or I would say all of the people in the picture, are white people. The reason why this is important to note is because it shows us why people do not want to discuss racism, and it's because the privilege that some white people have developed over the United States believe that because they have that privilege, they're inherently connected to the institutions, and because of that, if we're calling institutions racist and we need to abolish those, white people are also assuming that we're meaning white people as well. When in reality, it's just the institutions. We just want to get rid of institutions that promote hate within communities, not only of color, but in communities across America. And with that being said, brings me on to my closing. Again, critical race theory should be taught in schools because it provides students with the opportunity to learn about all the types of folks in the United States. It may highlight the bad in our country, but within the bad, it promotes a better future for all Americans. For me, critical race theory is about hope. Critical race theory promotes the idea that although we've gone through so much, it realizes the progression that we've made and how we can make it even better. Critical race theory doesn't say that America is wrong and America needs to burn, but America needs to develop new institutions and counsel the old ones that have continued to oppress people of color because of their race. When I think about critical race theory, and this is what I'll leave off on, when I think about critical race theory, I think of the idea that critical race theory isn't curriculum. It's not just like a history class that you're sitting in and you're learning. Critical race theory is a mindset. It's a mindset to always want to be a better person for the people around you and the community that you have. So never forget, when you see these discussions on critical race theory and the importance of critical race theory and why people oppose it, just always remember that critical race theory comes from a place of love and a place of hope and a place of progressive movement. Critical race theory is not a place where we accept hate. Critical race theory is realizing hate and understanding that hate has been a big part of who we are currently. And the only way to take that hate out of our United States is be able to address the wrongdoings that we've done in history and realize that together, if we promote the solidarity between communities of all likes, we'd be able to have a better America. Thank you.